Robert E. Lee. Personal life and military career. Personal life. Robert Edward Lee was born on January 19, 1807, at Stratford Hall Plantation in Westmoreland County, Virginia, into a prominent Virginia family. His father, Henry Lighthorse Harry Lee III, was a Revolutionary War hero and governor of Virginia. But financial troubles and imprisonment for debt marred his later years, leaving the family in reduced circumstances. Lee's mother, Anne Hill Carter Lee, raised him with a strong sense of duty and Christian values. Education and early influences. Lee attended local schools and was influenced by his family's aristocratic traditions and his mother's piety. He entered the United States Military Academy at West Point in 1825, graduating second in his class in 1829 without a single demerit. Marriage and family. In 1831, Lee married Mary Anna Randolph Custis, the great-granddaughter of Martha Washington. At Arlington House, they had 7 children: George Washington Custis, Mary, William Henry, Fitzhugh, Agnes, Annie, Robert Edward Jr., and Mildred. Mary inherited Arlington House, but her health declined due to arthritis, leaving Lee to manage family affairs. The couple maintained a close but sometimes strained marriage due to Lee's long military absences and Mary's health issues. Later years. After the Civil War, Lee became president of Washington College, now Washington and Lee University in Lexington, Virginia, from 1865 until his death. He focused on education, promoting reconciliation and practical learning. Lee suffered a stroke on September 28, 1870, and died on October 12, 1870, at age 63, likely from pneumonia complications. Robert E. Lee. Complete military career. Robert E. Lee's military career spanned from 1829 to 1865, encompassing distinguished service in the U.S. Army and a pivotal role as a Confederate general during the Civil War. Below is a detailed account of his military career, focusing exclusively on his professional service as requested. U.S. Army, 1829 to 1861 commission and early assignments, 1829 to 1846, graduated second in his class from West Point in 1829. Commissioned as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, worked on coastal fortifications, including Fort Pulaski, Georgia, Fort Monroe, Virginia, and Fort Calhoun, Virginia. Demonstrated engineering prowess in projects like improving navigation on the Mississippi River and stabilizing harbors in St. Louis and New York. Promoted to first lieutenant in 1836 and captain in 1838. His meticulous work earned him a reputation for precision and discipline. Mexican-American War, 1846-1848, served under General Winfield Scott during the U.S. campaign against Mexico. Assigned to Scott's staff, Lee excelled in reconnaissance and engineering. Key contributions included mapping routes and guiding artillery at the Siege of Veracruz, March 1847, planning the assault at Cerro Gordo, April 1847, and conducting daring scouting missions at Contreras and Churubusco at the Battle of Chapultepec. September 1847, Lee's reconnaissance was critical to capturing Mexico City. He was wounded slightly, but continued serving, earning praise from Scott as the very best soldier I ever saw in the field. Received 3 brevet promotions for gallantry, 2 major lieutenant colonel and colonel, superintendent of West Point, 1852 to 1855. Appointed superintendent of the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, modernized the curriculum, improved facilities, and enforced discipline, though he found administrative duties less fulfilling than field command. Frontier duty, 1855 to 1861, transferred to the 2nd U.S. Cavalry as a lieutenant colonel, serving in Texas, engaged in border security and operations against Native American tribes, including Comanches, commanded Fort Brown and other posts, dealing with sporadic skirmishes. Found frontier duty monotonous but honed leadership skills. Harper's Ferry Raid, 1859, in October 1859. Lee was temporarily in Washington, D.C., when abolitionist John Brown seized the federal arsenal at Harper's Ferry, Virginia. As the senior officer available, Lee led a detachment of U.S. Marines to suppress the raid. Directed the assault that captured Brown, restoring order within hours. His swift action reinforced his loyalty to federal authority. Asterisk Confederate Army, 1861 to 1865. Joining the Confederacy, 1861. In early 1861, as secession divided the nation, Lee was offered command of the Union Army by General Scott. Loyal to Virginia, he declined and resigned from the U.S. Army on April 20, 1861. After Virginia appointed a major general in the Virginia State Forces, and later a general in the Confederate States Army, initially served as a military advisor to President Jefferson Davis. Early Confederate commands 1861 organized Virginia's defenses and briefly commanded forces in Western Virginia. His first campaign at Cheat Mountain, September 1861, was a setback. Criticized for poor coordination against Union forces sent to oversee coastal defenses in South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, where he strengthened fortifications against Union naval threats. Asterisk Command of the Army of Northern Virginia, 1862 to 1865, took command on June 1, 1862, after General Joseph E. Johnston was wounded during the Peninsula Campaign. Renamed his force the Army of Northern Virginia, which he led until the war's end. 7 days battles June-July 1862 repelled Union General George McClellan's advance on Richmond during a series of engagements, for example, Gaines' Mill, Malvern Hill. Despite heavy Confederate losses, Lee's aggressive tactics forced McClellan's retreat. Second Battle of Manassas, August 1862, collaborated with General Thomas Stonewall Jackson to decisively defeat Union General John Pope, securing Northern Virginia. Maryland Campaign and Antietam, September 1862, invaded Maryland to gain supplies, weaken Northern morale, and seek foreign support. The Battle of Antietam, September 17, 1862, was a tactical draw, but a strategic setback after Lee's battle plans were found by Union forces the Lost Order. Withdrew to Virginia after the war's bloodiest single day. Battle of Fredericksburg, December 1862. Positioned on strong defensive ground, Lee routed Union General Ambrose Burnside's army, inflicting heavy casualties with minimal Confederate losses. Battle of Chancellorsville, May 1863. Lee's tactical masterpiece, dividing his smaller army to outmaneuver Union General Joseph Hooker. Jackson's flanking attack crushed the Union right. But Jackson's death from friendly fire was a major blow. Gettysburg Campaign, July 1863, invaded Pennsylvania to disrupt Union strategy and pressure northern cities. The Battle of Gettysburg, July 1 to 3, 1863, ended in defeat after heavy fighting, particularly Pickett's charge on the third day. Lee retreated, marking a turning point in the war. Overland Campaign, May-June 1864, faced Union General Ulysses S. Grant's relentless offensives. Fought bloody battles at the Wilderness, Spotsylvania Courthouse, and Cold Harbor, inflicting heavy Union losses but unable to halt Grant's advance due to superior Union resources. Asterisk Siege of Petersburg, June 1864, April 1865, defended Richmond and Petersburg in a 9-month siege. Lee's entrenched lines held initially, but dwindling manpower and supplies weakened his army. Final campaign and surrender. April 1865, as Union forces broke through at Petersburg, Lee abandoned Richmond and retreated west. Surrounded and outnumbered, he surrendered to Grant at Appomattox Courthouse on April 9, 1865, effectively ending the Civil War. Asterisk Military legacy, tactical and strategic impact, Lee's aggressive tactics, audacious maneuvers, and defensive brilliance. For example, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville made him the Confederacy's most effective commander. His ability to inspire troops and operate with limited resources was remarkable. Controversial decisions. His invasions of the North Antietam, Gettysburg aimed for decisive victories but exposed his army to risks, contributing to Confederate defeats. Critics debate his focus on the Eastern Theater over supporting Western campaigns. Post-war influence. Lee's strategies are still studied in military academies for their boldness and adaptability. His dignified surrender at Appomattox set a tone for reconciliation, though his legacy is complicated by his defense of the Confederacy. Asterisk Robert E. Lee. Family, wife, and children. Wife. Robert E. Lee married Mary Anna Randolph Custis on June 30, 1831, at Arlington House, Virginia. Mary was the only surviving child of George Washington Parke Custis, the grandson of Martha Washington, making her the great-granddaughter of Martha Washington. She inherited Arlington House and its estate, including enslaved people, but suffered from chronic arthritis, which limited her mobility later in life. Children. Robert and Mary Lee had 7 children, listed below, with their full names and brief details. George Washington, Custis Lee, 1832 to 1913, known as Custis E., served as a Confederate general and later became president of Washington and Lee University. Mary Custis Lee, 1835 to 1918, never married. She traveled extensively and lived at Arlington House until its seizure by the Union during the Civil War. William Henry Fitzhugh Lee, 1837 to 1891, nicknamed Rooney. He was a Confederate cavalry general and later a U.S. congressman. Anne Carter Lee, 1839 to 1862, called Annie. She died of typhoid fever during the Civil War, deeply affecting the family. Agnes Lee, 1841 to 1873, never married. She was close to her father and died young of illness. Robert Edward Lee, Jr., 1843-1914, known as Rob. He served as a Confederate officer and later became a planter and businessman. Mildred Child Lee, 1846 to 1905, the youngest, called precious life by her father. She never married and cared for her parents in their later years. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more military and geopolitical updates.